forward planning our wedding, each decision we make comes with a reminder of two of the most important people to us, Bart and Krista, will not be there to celebrate this special occasion with us. I've cried about their loss on multiple occasions and will continue to mourn and cry many more times. I've experienced a lot of weight loss as I was unable to eat due to the high level of stress, anxiety, and uncertainty surrounding what had happened to Bart and Krista over that long period of time. I missed work for over a month, and even now that I'm back, there are times I struggle to make it through the day. Bart and Krista were amazing people. They were there to help everyone and anyone with whatever they could. Krista had always been so welcoming to me. From the first time I met her in 2014 for Christmas to the morning that we both called her and Bart to tell them the good news that Mitchell and I were engaged in 2020, to the afternoon we spent at their home for Father's Day in June of 2021, just a week before they were killed. Krista was excited to talk with me and always made me feel at home. Bart had a wonderful sense of humor and was a great handyman. He helped us set up many things when we moved into our new home and helped teach us so that we could do it on our own next time. I miss their warm presence and their kind hearts every single day. Both Bart and Krista had so much to look forward to that they will never get to experience. They will never get to see their son get married or start a family. Mitchell and I will miss them terribly during these milestones. Holding their grandchildren, watching them play sports, hearing about school, and all those things that Bart and Krista were so excited for, they will never get to do. They loved going to wineries, breweries, concerts on the square, the farmers market, and had been dreaming about many different trips to explore Wisconsin and the United States. But again, due to their senseless murders, they will never get to experience these things. We are comforted in knowing that Chandler cannot physically hurt us. However, if he was given the opportunity for parole, I would be terrified for Mitchell and my family's safety. Given the fact that he was capable of such calculated and horrific act of murder, I do not believe my family would be safe if he were ever to be released from prison. For this reason, I believe he should not be given the chance for parole. Bart and Krista's murders have greatly impacted my life and the rest of the Halderson and Frater family lives as well. The second letter is from Kayleen Halderson, mother of Bart and Chandler's grandmother. Judge, these are my feelings about Chandler. He is my grandson. I love him even though what he did was horrific. I can't believe his parents would want him to be incarcerated for life. I'm hoping he will find a trade or a craft while there to become a productive and caring person. We hope the people in charge of that facility will feel someday he deserves a second chance in life with the possibility of parole. Chandler's grandma, Kayleen Halderson. So last week, I had the pleasure and the opportunity to meet with Krista's best friend of 38 years, Jane. And I just spoke to her very candidly, tell me about Bart and Krista. And she shared some really interesting and I think important things. She shared that Krista was a staple in her life, a sister in every way except for biological. She was the aunt to her daughters. She described Krista Halderson as having a lightness about her, that when she'd walk into the room, you would just feel happier. She was bubbly. She was a helper, wanted to always fix people's problems. Krista was described by her boss at work as the work mom for everything. She was the person you went to if you needed Tylenol, a hug, or a pep talk. She listened to people and cared about people. She went out of her way to lift people up. She was the type of person that you would feel happier, that would make you feel happier after you talked to her. The title that was most important to Krista was that of mom. That was her identity. Being a mom was her purpose in life.
Just a FYI for people watching, I'm grasping some of the information. I'm fixing a little bit of the metadata. But it says, after 2 hours of deliberations, the jury has found Chandler Halderson guilty of killing his parents. So this is like the sentencing phase. The 23-year-old Dane County man was found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide in the death of his parents, Bart and Krista Halderson. Just a really quick little fill-in.
I not only talked to Jane about Bart Halderson, but also his family over the last several weeks.
Girlfriend?
Bart was quieter. He worked hard and he provided for his family. He was up for quite a big promotion right before his murder. He liked the outdoors, nature, fishing, and his family. He was redoing and in the process of renovating his entire house, nearly down to the studs. He had recently built a brand new dining table made of pure wood, which he had hoped that they would use for the rest of their lives, celebrating the holidays with the grandkids. He was close with his older brother, Brett, and his parents, who are both still alive. Bart is described as generous, doing little things to take care of people. Jane pointed out that every time he was in Milwaukee, he would always take her daughters out when they were in college for a free meal with their Uncle Bart. One other thing that actually one of our detectives pointed out today is in the course of their employment, they read through a whole bunch of text messages from all sorts of people. And they were really struck about how nice Bart and Krista were. They really didn't say a bad word about anyone, not even to each other. They were kind, respectful. They texted often about worrying about this son or that son and various things. They were loving towards each other. Bart and Krista, of course, will now not see their older son get married. They won't be present for their grandchildren. They won't get to experience the retirement that they really had been planning for decades. And they didn't get to say goodbye to anyone. Multiple people, when we talked to them about Bart and Krista, said, you know, if they would have found out about Chandler's lies and his deception, they would have been upset. They would have been. But they also would have worked with him to get him back on the right track. They were sure of this. More than one person had made a statement like this to us, that Bart and Krista would have continued to be the supportive parents that their entire track record had showed that they were. I just want to point out one more thing about the seriousness of the offense. The victimization that was caused here extends well beyond Bart and Krista Halderson. Because of Chandler's actions, his grandparents had to bury a child. His brother lost his entire nuclear family overnight. The entire family is forever altered. People who were generous to Chandler, such as his girlfriend and her family, have had their lives completely uprooted as well. Bart and Krista's friends will again never get to enjoy them. And numerous people have guilt because they wonder, were there red flags that I missed? Could I have prevented this? Chandler's actions have caused uncalculable amounts of trauma for dozens of people. Your Honor, as you craft a sentence, I'm asking that you please consider all this trauma as part of the seriousness of this offense in creating a just sentence.
I'm going to comment on some of the other sentencing factors. I'm going to start with the submission by the defense, which I thought was well put together and well written, and included an article, a law review article that I read with great interest. Obviously, it concerns what I do for a living, and it's something I should think about. One thing that, before I start, I do want to thank both the defense attorneys. I think they've done a hard job, a job that they've sworn to do and dedicated their lives to doing as being defense attorneys and public defenders. And I've appreciated their presence, and they've been nothing but respectful and honorable in their task. And it was a hard job in this case. But speaking especially to their submission today, Attorney Dorrell said something that stuck out to me as absolutely true, which is one of the lines, which is, it seems that people, I'm quoting, paraphrasing here, believe that today is a foregone conclusion as to what the outcome is. And I, like her, I don't know that that's true. And I certainly don't think it's true with you, Judge. I'll tell you that As a prosecutor, I often prosecute homicides, and that's an unfortunate reality of being a prosecutor in a city. People commit the crime of intentional homicide. These hearings happen a great deal. My job is obviously to convict people if I believe they're guilty, and here, obviously, of course, I believe that, and I did that. But when it comes to sentencing, the questions are not simply in my gut, do I feel like this is a bad guy? Do I personally have some vendetta or reason to want to push for a specific sentence? My role is to examine the legal factors and to employ my role as the executive branch's representative in these hearings as thoughtfully and as compassionately as I can. I have to recognize, and I think all prosecutors should recognize as the representative of the executive branch at a sentencing, especially a sentencing in which we're talking about an imprisonment of the defendant that could be many decades, that nothing should be a foregone conclusion, that we should approach this with a level of analysis and questioning and of skepticism that we do some of the most important questions in our lives, professionally or personally. And I'll tell you and Mr. Halderson and the community that I've done that. I've thought a great deal, as has Ms. Raymond, as the detectives. Mr. Halderson's being sentenced to life in prison today. This hearing is about whether he's ever going to be granted parole or eligible for parole, excuse me. And that's a challenging decision for everyone to make. And I'll let you know that I have not entered this process in thinking about what the state's recommendation should be, with that being a foregone conclusion. Luckily, the law tells me what I'm supposed to think about when I'm considering what the executive branch of government is going to represent as its opinion in this case. It tells me that I should consider the gravity of the offense, the need to protect the public, and the rehabilitative needs of Mr. Halderson, amongst other factors, mitigating factors and things of that sort. But those are the three that generally are focused upon. They're called the galleon factors here in Wisconsin. That's supposed to guide us in our thought process. And I'll walk through those and my thought process in making my recommendation. I'll start with the rehabilitative needs of Mr. Halderson. I have no idea what they are. Mr. Halderson has an absolute right to not participate in these proceedings, and he is not being sentenced today. And I'm not asking you to sentence him based on his non-participation in either the PSI or a trial, of course. Those are his constitutional rights, or even today. That being said, as Ms. Raymond said, almost always in a sentencing hearing for a homicide or even lesser crimes, we have some understanding as players in the criminal justice system of the underlying causes of someone's problems, the root causes. Frequently, it's substance abuse. Frequently, it's mental illness. Frequently, it's inability to control anger and other behavioral problems that have manifested themselves throughout someone's life. You probably are wondering, and I'll tell you, it's been thoroughly investigated of whether there were any red flags that anyone missed. Was Mr. Halderson engaged in bad behavior as a youth? Was he harming animals? Was he harming people? None of that is true that we can tell. He seemed to be a pretty normal kid with a pretty normal life who did a pretty abnormal thing as he turned 23. You don't know what his rehabilitative needs are, and that's a challenge. The reason we focus on that is this idea in the criminal justice system that we can rehabilitate almost everyone. And I'll say, I think that to be true. I really do. The vast majority of people who are charged with this crime of first-degree intentional homicide, as grievous as it might be and as difficult as it might be sometimes for the victims to hear it, they are people who can be rehabilitated, that we can address that root underlying cause of mental illness or substance abuse, and they can emerge from the state prison system, perhaps not a perfect person, but a better person. And society can have some comfort, and we can all go to bed at night and sleep soundly knowing that we've done what we can to try to prevent some future harm from occurring because we've addressed that identifiable problem. You don't have that. And if you don't have that, I'm not sure how much you can consider that factor. And the law is very clear. When you're addressing the galleon factors, you don't have to weigh them up equally. You have to consider them all. But I would pose to the court that that's not a factor that you should ultimately consider a great deal, because I don't know what information the court could rely on in determining that there are some identifiable and fixable rehabilitative needs of Mr. Halderson. Next, the court has to consider the protection of the public. And here's where I think the court has to probably give a great weight to this factor. Mr. Halderson, by all accounts, chose to commit the crime of first-degree intentional homicide twice on a single day because he was caught lying about where he was working and going to school, or perhaps just where he was going to school. It was uncomfortable, probably, that he was caught. It probably wasn't an experience he was looking forward to in dealing with the repercussions of that. But those kind of inconveniences and uncomfortable situations are constantly present in life. Every one of us in this courtroom have dealt with bad situations in life. Every one of us have left work one day thinking, man, I really don't want to go home tonight because I did something and I'm going to have to talk about it. Every one of us here has probably walked into work one day thinking, boy, I don't really want to walk into my supervisor's office and got to talk about that. Life is full of inconveniences. Life is full of being uncomfortable. The difference between everyone else in this room and Mr. Halderson is all of us have owned up to that. All of us walked into those rooms, walked into our front door. All of us have addressed those situations, whether it be comfortable or uncomfortable, whether it lead to the loss of relationships or respect or money. We've all addressed them. You walk in, you take your lumps, you leave. But when faced with, in the grand scheme of things, a minor inconvenience in his life, Mr. Halderson chose to commit the crime of first-degree intentional homicide 2 times. And then over the course of several days, chose to cut up those people's bodies and spread them around the state. Chose to lie to the police, concoct a bizarre story, lead his family down this road of believing that there was just some hope somewhere out there that Bart and Krista were alive. Because he got caught in a minor inconvenience. I don't know how you protect the public from someone like that. I don't know how any of us would have any comfort in thinking that Mr. Halderson would ever be in a better place to make those decisions more wisely. It's even more compounded and perhaps aggravated in the legal sense by the fact that no one saw this coming. He is someone who was able to perhaps have this capability or perhaps have these thoughts in life and insert himself into relationships, social situations, his family, without anyone wondering, is this a safe person to be around? Sometimes in court for homicide sentencings, the guy next to us is a history a mile long of violent crime and is willing to talk about it. And you wonder when people are even around that person, it seems like a dangerous guy. Part of the risk of Chandler is he doesn't look like a dangerous guy. He's packaged up into like a normal middle-class kid and was able to fool everyone. Not only fool everyone about these crazy lies about work and school and activities, but fool everyone into believing that he was a safe person to be around, that he was trustworthy, that he wasn't going to, not exaggerating the facts, shoot you in the back, because that's in fact what happened. Someone in Mr. Halderson's shoes with his mindset can never be safely in this community. His willingness to solve the minor inconveniences of life with brutal violence can never be mitigated in our community. As long as he breathes, he will be a risk. He will be a risk because he will suffer more minor inconveniences, as will we all. And lastly, the court has to consider the gravity of the offense. Ms. Raymond talked a good deal about that. Part of that is considering the people he hurt. Not only his parents, who by all accounts were loving and caring, but the community, their character as people. Gravity of the offense is sometimes called retribution in some systems, and I'll note that retribution is an appropriate thing to consider in law. At times, it's part of the gravity of the offense. But here there is no more grave offense. The crime of first-degree intentional homicide is as serious as it gets. Committing it twice is even more serious. And committing it against the people who are you're supposed to love the most is beyond comprehension for many in our community. There's an interesting quote as I prepared for today. I was looking at some cases, just trying to look into the mindset of other judges as they've considered these factors and the concept of punishment in the law. Justice Stewart, a while back in Furman versus Georgia, wrote, "The instinct for retribution is part of the nature of man, and channeling that instinct in the administration of criminal justice serves an important purpose in promoting the stability of a society governed by law." There was another case in the late 40s. It was Williams versus New York. Retribution is no longer the dominant objective of criminal law. but it is neither forbidden nor one inconsistent with our respect for the dignity of man. When we talk about the gravity of the offense, it's a consideration. The court gets to decide what that means. But you should consider that in my mind, in my experience as a prosecutor in this county, as a citizen of this state, I've never heard of a crime more serious. I've never heard of a crime more brutal. Mr. Halderson's mere presence in our community, the fact that he did any of this, has ripped apart the fabric of our community. The idea that someone can live amongst us with no warning signs and commit such heinous acts should scare everybody, and it sure as hell scared everybody here. No one who's interacted with Mr. Halderson will ever be the same. For whatever reason he decided to do it, whatever justification he can come up with in his own mind, whether it be today or down the road in many years, nothing will ever explain it. His actions in July of this year were evil. And for this generation and at this time, Mr. Halderson is the personification of evil in our community. He can work the rest of his life at trying to earn back the respect and trust and love of maybe some of his family, and I hope he does that. But that's a different thing than what's going on here today. Our question is whether Mr. Halderson should ever be released from prison, and if so, when should he have that opportunity to ask? It's my position that he should never be released from prison. That the mere possibility of his return to our community would shock the conscience of almost every citizen of this community. It would depreciate the seriousness of what he's done. It would cause extreme angst, animosity, probably for many, to even feel that that's a possibility. We don't have a more serious punishment, but sometimes it's appropriate. And in this case, it's the state's position, it is my position, it is my recommendation that Mr. Halderson spend the remainder of his life in prison, that he not be eligible for parole at any point. Again, there is no more serious crime. Mr. Halderson has to come to terms with what he's done, and I hope he does someday. But that doesn't mean he should ever be released. And I ask that you not let him be released. Thank you.
Attorney Vera, were any statements being made beyond counsel's regarding the sentencing here on Mr. Halderson's behalf?
No, Your Honor.
Then would you be speaking on this regard?
I will, yes.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Earlier this week, Attorney Doral did file a sentencing memorandum, which we know Your Honor has read and considered. We stand by that submission, and we just have a couple more additions to add right now. You know, we've talked about family and the seriousness of this case and the public. And sentencing is a very intimate matter, especially in a case like this where it is a family situation. I bring that up because at the end of the day, regardless of what happens today in this courtroom, no one is going to be happy. No one is going to run out of this courtroom feeling like justice is served. No one is going to run out of this courtroom feeling good. This family is going to always have this situation, is going to be touched by this situation, and Chandler himself is always going to be touched by this moment, which makes it a very intimate matter. But it also has become a very public affair. Regardless of what you do today, the outside world, the community, the public, however you want to address it, is going to be not happy. There are going to be people that, if you decide to sentence Chandler to life without parole, they're still going to be mad. They're going to ask for Wisconsin to bring the death penalty back and to apply it retroactively to him. And if you sentence him without or with parole, there are people that are going to be mad because it's too lenient. I bring this up because, again, it's what happens here today is not a win-win or a lose-lose situation. It is what it is, and it's difficult. What I do want to focus on today is just what we're asking for, which we are asking for the possibility of parole. Okay. And I want to stress that it is a possibility. It is not a guarantee. It is not something that is going to happen even if Your Honor says today that there's a possibility that it could happen. According to the statute, 302.114 of the Wisconsin statutes, it's a process. If Your Honor finds him eligible for parole today, he would have to go through this process that can start no earlier than 90 days before the eligibility date. It's a process that would require a petition to the court. It would perhaps be Your Honor or someone else, but it would be a court petition. It would be something submitted to the district attorney's office as well. They are allowed to give their 2 cents on whether it should be granted or it should not be granted. Your Honor is allowed to make the decision on its face if it's going to grant parole or not. There's the opportunity for victims and those impacted by this case to give their 2 cents as well. There's an opportunity for a hearing where at that point, Mr. Halderson would have to show that he is worthy of parole. Not only that, but it's not a situation where he can continue to apply and apply. Your Honor, whoever the court is at that time, would have the opportunity to say, you are not allowed to apply anymore. I'm going to give you one more chance. I'm going to give you 2 more chances. It's not something that he would have to continue to ask for year after this eligibility date, should Your Honor grant it. So it's not a process that is a guarantee. It is simply a process that we are asking that you allow for the possibility of that process happening. And I cannot stress that enough. I cannot stress enough how all we are asking for today is for the possibility of this man to show you that he is redeemable. Attorney Brown brought up points about rehabilitation and how and everything that we've seen. And yes, there was a lot of evidence and a lot of discovery in this case. There may not be something to point out right away that is quote unquote a rehabilitative process. There isn't any kind of substance abuse issue, none of that. But to be perfectly fair, and whether you want to call him a kid, a young man, a young adult, Chandler is young. He just turned 24. There are a lot of growing up. There's a lot of adulting that he's going to miss out on, that he's going to have to do in the institution, that ultimately is going to affect who he becomes in the future. Most of us get the opportunity to do that around our family, with our community, whatever it is. And he's going to have to do that in custody. But I bring that up because there's certain things about my own childhood, about my own life, that I didn't really understand until I was later in my late 20s. That affected how I was as a person in my early 20s. So it's easy to come up now and say that there's no rehabilitation that's needed here. Well, we just don't know that. So ultimately, it boils down to what Your Honor believes is an appropriate, fair, and just option, given everything, given all the galleon factors that the state has mentioned and that we have mentioned in our sentencing memorandum. And it's a delicate balance. If Your Honor believes that sentencing is purely punitive, purely an issue of punishment, then the only option is life without parole. But if Your Honor believes that it is a delicate combination of punishment and rehabilitation, redemption, if you will, then there's only one option, and that is the option of life with parole. As far as when that eligibility comes to play, we leave that up to Your Honor. You know the case, you've been here with the trial. That date we leave up to you. But we are asking that you do provide Chandler with the opportunity to show to Your Honor that he is redeemable in the future. And that's all we're asking for today, life with parole. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that in your memorandum, there was an indication once again that Mr. Halderson would not exercise his right to elocute at this hearing. Obviously, just as with trial, it comes up to a decision at the very last minute. I just want to ensure at this moment whether or not Mr. Halderson wishes to make a statement.
And thank you for doing that. That has changed. Mr. Halderson would like to give a statement to Your Honor.
Okay, let's hear it.
You may remove your mask if you wish. I believe the conditions in the jail are in very very good as far as the pandemic. So if you want to speak without your mask and Attorney Dorrell's comfortable with that, you could.
Absolutely.
And I would only ask that you read slowly, simply because my court reporter has to take down what you're saying, and sometimes we read faster than we mean to.
Your Honor, I want to take this opportunity to state my intent to appeal my convictions. If there are any lawyers listening and willing to take on my appeal, take a moment to please reach out to me. It's not that I do not have feelings. It's that I was warned to not show them due to the scrutiny of this case. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, oh,
The court always tends to make a number of observations at sentencing hearings that are contested and which carry a good deal of weight, and I'm not going to depart from that process today. I first think it's important to acknowledge that the trial and the process within this case that brings us here today was the united effort of a number of people. And first and foremost, I want to recognize again the jurors, but not just those 12 people that rendered the verdicts here, but those alternates, those people that responded to the summons, especially given the time of year that this occurred, and the concerns that were rife regarding individual health. We, as by necessity, inconvenienced a number of citizens, and in the end, when I spoke to them, they had no regrets about their service. And that is because they understood that under our system, that is vital. And they understood that they had a duty to perform once selected. So I thank them once again. I want to thank the bailiff staff who, throughout those weeks of trial, worked incredibly well in assisting the parties, the court, the witnesses, and the media. I want to thank the prosecution because I thought that the case that they presented was done efficiently, economically, but most importantly, with due deference to the nature of the evidence and the need to present that evidence in a manner which honored the people who were lost. We had a number of lay witnesses that came to court to testify. I assume that they all would rather have been somewhere else, but they all came willingly and testified here, and I appreciated their participation and the time that it took for them, again, under the circumstances, both as far as health and the nature of the proceedings and their testimony. Counsel mentioned that this crime caused a rip in our community. If there's one thing that's a positive coming out of this, I think that it is a demonstration to our community of the pride we should feel in our law enforcement, the pride we should feel in how they investigated this case and how they presented the evidence in this case. It was, well, I honestly think it put Dane County on the map through both the Justice Department efforts and the efforts of our local Sheriff's Department and other law enforcement agencies involved. It was quite incredible. I also want to finally say something about the fact that at every trial, just about, I hear defense attorneys speaking to jurors in voir dire about the fact that the defendant has a right to a trial. The defendant does not have to prove anything. The defendant does not have to testify. Sometimes the counsel will go to the extent of saying, we don't have to do anything. It's the state's burden. It's the state's responsibility to carry the case forward, to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And you should find the defendant not guilty if you believe they failed in that. Attorneys Dorrell and Vera carried out their constitutional duty in this case efficiently. And I don't want to say too much more because of mention already about questions about the review of what they did in representing Mr. Halderson. But I wouldn't be remiss if I did not say that their actions, and I agree with Mr. Brown in this respect, that their actions at trial advanced Mr. Halderson's constitutional right to require the state to prove its case, and did so in a professional and efficient manner such that I find that they served their role in this process admirably.
Are judges doing this? Is the thing judges? Oh, no. Are they doing this thing now? It reminded me of the other judge from Jussie. I know they give comments and stuff, but
I'm very passionate about our system.
okay.
And so let me move on to the points in this proceeding at which I need to be dispassionate. And I need to be dispassionate because as the person sitting in judgment, I have to try and achieve a proper analysis of the sentencing goals based upon the information and evidence put forward and what the legislature has determined to be the appropriate sentences, at least as far as maximums, mandatory minimums, if any, and here, obviously, as addressed by everyone, the determination of whether there should be any eligibility for parole in the future. Technically extended supervision, but it's easier just to say parole. I've had the benefit of observing everything at the trial, whether it occurred before the jury or not. I've had the benefit of reviewing all the pre-trial submissions by the parties. I've had the benefit of the pre-sentence investigation and the materials submitted by victims, orally by the state in writing, by the defense, and orally here today. And Mr. Halderson has exercised his constitutional right as well. I don't know the victims. I did not know the victims. I know people like them, I'm privileged to say, and I know and can understand the empty space that this crime has left. I can empathize. I can only partially understand the feelings because I haven't lost people in my family through such a manner or had a violation by a member of the family causing such loss. But everyone in this room has a mother and a father. Everyone has siblings, if they're fortunate, and everyone can understand the loss that the Halderson family, extended as it is, and their friends and this community feel for their loss. It is tragic. It is tragic. It is something which will take decades for some to heal. I hope not that long, but healing may never come for some. One does not know. And I hope that no one is coming here for that healing. This procedure provides closure only of this legal part of the matter. What people can do in their own lives to address their loss is what they must do themselves and amongst others. But I do want you to know that this court honors your loss, honors the people who died, and approaches this sentencing here, weighing that gravity of that offense as one of those things which must be weighed in determining whether or not Mr. Halderson should ever be eligible for parole, as the life sentences I must impose are predetermined by the legislature. It is true that rehabilitation is a factor that must be considered, and Attorney Brown's point is well noted, that I'm not certain that anyone has identified rehabilitative needs, but those may arise over time, depending upon an individual's receptiveness and willingness to participate in self-examination or diagnosis or other steps which our criminal justice system utilizes to try and determine how to fix something, whether it's a substance abuse issue or an anger issue or something that is only amenable to treatment by medication or intensive therapy. Some people, I believe, can't be fixed. I have no basis to know whether Mr. Halderson fits into any of those categories, other than I think it's fairly clear here that nothing was identified in his 23, 24 years of life up to this point, except for his actions in July. And to an extent, his actions over the year plus leading up to that, where he was deceiving his family and his friends. The gravity of the offense is as serious as it could be, and I must not overlook, of course, the steps taken to hide the crime. The steps taken which, if one ponders it, certainly makes the crime even worse. If you could say that the murder of your parents is something that could be made worse. I've tried, even though I've had to examine carefully the evidence, not to think about it. I've tried not to think about how or what steps were taken or how these things even took place. I don't wish to engage in that speculation at sentencing, but I recognize that the jury found Mr. Halderson guilty of mutilating both bodies, hiding both bodies, and presenting a story to law enforcement to try and lead them on a completely different path than what had actually occurred. And that he took steps in those actions which really robbed those people of dignity.
Thank you, Cam. Appreciate you coming.
But fortunately, their dignity is in whole here in these people that remember them, these people that are here today because of them. I appreciated learning more about them, and my condolences go to every member of their family. There's no foregone conclusions in sentencing. I've learned that since my time on the bench. I've learned that each case is different. Each case demands an individual examination. And sometimes I will confess I sit down not knowing what I'm going to do or not even certain which direction I'm leading. So I appreciate all of the statements made by counsel here and in writing, recognizing that the determination doesn't come until this point and nothing is foregone as far as a conclusion. This is the third individual for which I've had to make this determination.
Oh.
And similar to ADA Raymond's comments, I've had to sentence a host of other people up to this crime, where you can observe a lot in the background of the individual that you end up wishing hadn't been the case, because they might not have come to the point if they had had a better foundation. It is to Barton Krista's credit the foundation Mr. Halderson enjoyed. And it does not explain what happened here. And as everyone has discussed, there may be the ability to have rehabilitation throughout some course of time. And that's why the defense requests that that be kept in mind as to the determination of eligibility for parole. But in all honesty, I must say that as a wiser judge indicated to me once, you should sentence people not because of your anger, if indeed you're fearful of them, and not utilize the same standards for both.
Thanks, Allison. I'm going to have somebody call in.
I cannot conceive
Break it down.
of a way to fulfill my duty to protect the public that I serve, were I to perceive that at some point in time, an individual who committed these crimes should be released back into that public. I cannot grant to Mr. Halderson the generosity of spirit and empathy that his grandmother has for him. Empathy which his own parents would surely have had were he just owned up to what he had deceived them about. I cannot say to the community here in this room or at large in this county that Mr. Halderson should have the ability to be reviewed and considered for release back into our community at any point, despite his young age at this point in his life. The gravity of these offenses and the need to protect the public outweigh the potential that there could be that at some future point he should have presence among us. Now, that is not to say that he may not have the possibility of presence as a member of his family in the future. That is up to those folks and he, and that's mentioned in the defense memorandum regarding a hope that someday there might be a reconstruction of a relationship. That's all well and good. I would wish that for anyone, because I don't like telling his grandmother that I'm not able to give her the relief that she's asking for here out of her love for her grandson.
Yeah.
I cannot do that. I have to, for this sentence, ensure that the only time Mr. Halderson comes back into the community is to have the privilege of a burial that he denied his parents. And so on counts 1 and 5, per statute, I sentence him to life in prison, and pursuant to section 973.014, sub 1G3, I find that he is not.
Not what? You cut it out. Somebody messed up the audio.
Rather superfluous, to say the least, but at the same time, I absolutely acknowledge that we may be in a completely different
You heard him
position
curse?
here had he committed the acts of homicide, but then
No parole.
stopped and took other steps to accept responsibility and sought forgiveness of everyone.
Somebody messing up over there.
Because what happens with a weapon in a moment of panic is different than what happened over those 48 to 72 hours. The events of which I don't wish to think of or consider once again, having listened to the evidence and observed the testimony and the physical evidence. So to make this quite simple, I will impose maximum terms concurrent to each other and concurrent to counts 1 and 5 on each of the other counts within the information of which the verdict convicted Mr. Halderson. I do believe that
All right.
by imposing the maximum, I'm recognizing the severity of those individual acts, but there is a life sentence here, so making them consecutive does not undermine the gravity of that, given the maximum penalty involved. I determined, by my calculation, 253 days of credit that the judgment of conviction would reflect from July 8th, 2021 until yesterday's date. And I will waive the court cost assessments and surcharges on each count based upon indigence, the balance on each of the victim witness fee to be payable during the course of his confinement. Is there any restitution being sought?
No, Your Honor.
Then I will enter no order for, or an order for zero restitution at this time. I don't have to address conditions of extended supervision, except to the point that there's an extended supervision component of the sentences on the other counts. So I would adopt the recommendations
Okay.
of the department on page
Simply,
24 of the pre-sentence.
So you can call it.
as
I'm
to
going to give the
those.
number. Hold on.
Although I recognize that extended supervision is denied under this sentence, so that point is moot. Attorney Brown or Raymond, did I overlook anything in passing judgment?
No.
Attorney Vera or Doral, did I overlook anything other than addressing post-conviction?
No.
Mr. Halderson, you have the absolute right to seek an appeal. You have 20 days within which to start that process. That's through filing a notice of intent. I believe that we have on file the notice that you understand and have been given notice of that right, and most importantly, of that deadline. Your signature's on that document. That'll be placed within the file here. I thank everyone for being here today. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to call in right now. Simply Stranger, if you're out there, can you call and explain to us the story and what we've missed throughout the trial? I got about 20 minutes. Let me do this real quick. You messed up.
Everyone, my name is James Langer. I'm the
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line.
As you just
Please enter
heard
your
there,
show or
Chandler
meeting
Halderson,
number and press pound.
sentenced to life in prison without
Welcome,
Okay.
host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-In Studio web interface.
So I just kind of want Simply Stranger, or unless there's somebody else that wants to call and kind of explain the story or take us through some of the highlights. It's 954-787-3009. And then we'll head out of here. I just wanted to pop in to hear the sentencing. I've heard of the name. I just never caught this story. And a lot of people were talking about this. Uh-oh, yeah, he has no sound. Get him. Now you know how it feels. I'm just kidding. I appreciate the notifications when it's not working. Let me put the number here in the chat. Yeah, I just want to kind of take 1-2 calls maybe, if she's still there. And Simply, thank you so much too for the PayPal. I got it. And Amanda, thank you for the email. I got back to you and I just saw your message. I definitely want to talk about that situation, the vitamin thing for sure. All right. Okay, we got one call. Let's see if this is Simply. 618, how you doing? Is this Simply?
Hey, you there?
Hey, who's this? Can you hear me? Hello? Oh, no. Let me see. Microphone. Oh, my microphone.
What's going on?
Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
There you are.
Okay, sorry. That was me. My computer keeps resetting audio settings and all that stuff. Is this
It's
Simply?
usually me, so whatever.
No, it
So,
was me
hey,
this time.
hey.
It's not you, it's me.
All right. So this kid was, first of all, this is the dumbest kid, and he thought he was so stupid smart. Like, he thought he had it all figured out. He had been lying about his whole life, all his life, like all his adult life. As soon as he went off to go to college, he was like, he took I think he went to one term I think he did one term in college and acquired debt in college and then pretended like he was continuing to go to college. And I told everybody he was graduating. His family, his friends, his fiance, her family. So his mom's girlfriend, his girlfriend's mom was gay, and her girlfriend is they would go to her girlfriend's dad's farm, and this is out in the country. Well, he gets invited out there to his with his fiance to this place, right? This farm, and then decides to go back out there and bury his dad's body out there. So when we were talking about the swimming pool in chat, these two are out there. His fiance's mom, and then his fiance's mom's girlfriend are in the pool. One of them is topless. This kid's out in the field forever. Said he wants to go in the pool, but doesn't come into the pool or whatever. Comes back in from the woods or whatever, and gets in the pool and starts washing himself off in the pool with his fiance's mom and his fiance's mom's girlfriend, who is topless. He gives them this thing about how horrible his life is and how his parents, are all kinds of bad and all this, and he's nothing but spoiled.
Was only the
He's been
torso
doing nothing but
in the
playing
pool?
video games.
What was the torso in the pool?
Where was the torso?
Yeah, they're saying only the torso there.
The torso was he buried the torso in the woods behind the pool.
Jeez.
And then he put the gun in the like pool room, the pool shed thing. He hid it there. Like, this is his, like, these people. Then he told like his mom's friend from work or whatever that he didn't have anyone to feed him or anything to do, and he convinced him to let him come over and have dinner at their house.
So do we know any
Like,
kind of motive? Has it ever come out, like, why he would kill his parents?
Well, I think it was just that he had lied and lied and lied
So everything
like,
was catching
he
up.
told
Like
them
everything.
he
I've
was
known people like that,
moving
like habitual liars.
Right.
Yeah, they can't stop
He
lying. They
told
lie about things they don't need to
everybody-
lie about. It's for no reason.
Oh, just, it was nonsense. Like, first he was working for some like insurance company from home or whatever during like COVID or whatever. But then, and he's, about to graduate, but then he's getting this great new job at SpaceX. And I can't remember how much he said he was going to make, but it was like some stupidly low amount that you would like, whatever. So he's got this new career he's supposed to be starting at SpaceX, and he's just put money down on this apartment and all this, and he's supposed to be taking his girlfriend with him. He's got this whole lie coming out. And of course, his dad finds out toward at the end. He calls the school because he can't get his grades. And so they're like, they're saying, well, he can't get his transcripts because he hasn't made his payments or whatever. So his dad's calling, trying to figure out what's going on, only to find out his son hasn't really been in school. And that he owes them money, whatever. So it all comes to a head. And how does he handle it? He murders his parents.
That's insane. Wow.
Right? This is
Do they know who he killed
nuts.
first? So he shot him, or how did he? What was the initial, like, before he dismembered
He
them?
would have killed his father first because his mom would have been at work.
Did he shoot them, or
So
what
like
did he
when
do?
she got home, he would have killed her next. What?
What did he do to kill them?
He shot them, I guess.
Oh, he
but
shot
then
them,
He
okay.
dismembered them.
Right.
And I mean, he wasn't like really good at hiding any parts of this. Like, it was, the only thing is he was and he wasn't, because they did not actually finish
Made up
finding the
emails
rest of his
too?
mom. Like, she was somewhere else.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Heads burned in the family
I mean,
fireplace. He burnt the family's head in the fireplace.
Part of him. Yeah, parts of him.
Wow, so this is a crazy
He did a
story.
little bit of everything with these bodies. It wasn't like.
So
it was
he's
just
over there
one
sitting
thing.
there in court, all innocent. Well, not innocently, but just nonchalant. Like, and this guy's a.
The whole time he'd just been sitting there playing video games. In fact, it's this buddy he used to game with online that gives him the gun. Like, the guy was like, he'd been in the military and all this, and they'd made friends over this game. Eventually they meet and he gives them this gun. Right.
Man,
Anyway,
well, thanks.
that's really
Simply
all
appreciate it.
I had on this.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Thanks so much.
thank you for
Have
the
a great
call.
day.
All right, you too. Bye.
All right,
I have
bye.
two other people that called in, so I'm gonna let them give some insight. And if I would have had more time, I would have showed. People were talking about the opening statements were actually really good, but I don't have time to do that. Maybe next time, or on the weekend, or what. I'm gonna have some extra time this next couple of days. So if you guys want to come and revisit that, just let me know. 513. How you doing? Where you calling from?
I'm calling from Ohio. I'm Amy,
Interrogation.
Ohio, in the chat.
Hey, Amy, Ohio. Welcome.
I had to call because I'm working right now, but I watched the entire trial. And the part, I would just fill in some gaps. He did shoot the dad, and he shot the dad because he had set up emails from what he said was different administrators at the school. So he was like emailing himself all these reasons that he couldn't get his transcripts. And then he said he had a job, and he would set up emails like it was the HR department with all these reasons of why he wasn't getting his paychecks.
Bro, that's crazy.
And
Is what he was
didn't have
showing
the
that?
job either.
He was showing that to his father, like, hey, this is what's going on. This is why. Like, is that what he was
Yeah,
doing?
and
Emailing
they-
himself and then showing it to his parents?
Yeah, and the dad actually, they had the call where he called the school because he was trying to stand up for his son. He was calling the school and the job like, you're supposed to be paying my son. You know, and why can't he get his transcripts? And he never went to school. And the fiance, he was studying with her, and she said that he had a whiteboard in his room, and he acted like he was working from home because of COVID. And he had all these things. He said he was designing solar panels for people's houses that wouldn't reflect into the road, so drivers wouldn't get blinded. and they wouldn't wreck. So he was like doing all these formulas for like these solar panels and didn't even have a job.
Wow. And why are people saying that, like, some people thought maybe the girlfriend was in on it, or that she had to have known something, or no, you don't believe she knew anything?
No, she testified. It was actually really
she
sad.
did?
They didn't have air conditioning in his parents' like multi-million-dollar home because I guess the weather was decent where they lived. And they they filled up a freezer with ice to do drinks and stuff like his whole life, and he had to bring over all this ice like several times. And then at one point, I guess they found out that he had put the body parts in the freezer with ice, and she didn't know. That she was helping him, but didn't know it. But how they figured out where all the body parts were was he Snapchatted his girlfriend like all the time. And they had location on so they could always see where each other was. And they had like Snapchat of him and his girlfriend with every location of every body part.
Wow.
So he wasn't too slick.
Right.
Yeah, his entire life was a lie. He even went to the ER and said he fell down the stairs and got hurt. And they gave him a neck brace even though there was nothing wrong with him. But due to HIPAA, they couldn't release those records to his family because he was an adult. And he had them believing that he had a brain bleed and he was going to wind up not being able to walk. And that's why he couldn't take the job at SpaceX ultimately, because he couldn't drive there. But the doctor even testified that there was nothing wrong with him.
Did you see the interrogation?
Yeah, I did. But he literally had family, friends, and stuff testifying that he had trouble walking and everything. They were all taking care of him.
That Chandler was having trouble walking? Oh my God.
Yeah, that he had messed up his neck and something in his brain when he quote unquote fell down the steps, but there was nothing wrong with him. Like he had people, his girlfriend was helping him go to the bathroom.
Wow, this is incredible.
So that's why he couldn't take this SpaceX job that he got from this non-college degree. He even sent her pictures of homes, like $800,000 homes in Florida, like off of realtor websites, and was telling her that he was there viewing these homes and he was putting the down payment on it for him and her to move to. But then he fell down the stairs and couldn't take the job and moved them to Florida.
That's so crazy. I've known people like that, like just habitual liars, lying about everything. They just keep raveling themselves in the lies, and just everybody around them is like fooled. It reminded me almost of, I know it's a completely different story, but I don't know if people in the chat, you remember that story, the lady that faked her pregnancy? The lady faked her pregnancy. The whole family thought she was pregnant. The guy dies. She was never pregnant. The guy dies, the boyfriend or whatever, and she's over there standing over his grave with the fake belly, like the whatever, posing and everything. The family had given her all this money, and when it comes time for her to have the baby, there's no baby.
Yeah, did you see the interrogation with this Chandler guy? Because he dismembered his parents, and they were saying all the blood they found in the home. And he said that it was there because his dad had eczema on his legs and would scratch and bleed, and his mom got nosebleeds because of the dry air. And they were like, that was a lot of blood. He was like, yeah, it was. I tried to get him to stop scratching it.
I might have to check it out. So if you guys want, we'll do. If you guys are interested, we'll see. We could do a stream where we watch the opening statements and maybe the interrogation, just to get an idea. We can see in the future.
You want to check out the fiance's testimony because it's so sad.
That was good. Like, okay. The girlfriend / fiance.
When she testified, I was like, yeah, she didn't know. I watched the whole trial. She even asked to keep her mask on, and I don't think it was really COVID. There was a reason that she could, and she was just.
Beth says, "Tell Mel about the fireplace."
Somebody's just beside themselves,
What happened at the fireplace? Really and the screen breaking, because the temperature is so hot or something.
I don't recall that part of the trial, to be honest. I just a lot of family saying that they thought he couldn't walk, and all these people taking care of him, and parents thought he was getting this. They were supporting him because he was going to have this SpaceX job and could make all this money, and they were bragging on him, and none of it was true.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the call. Thank you for some of the insight on that.
Oh, sure. I appreciate you taking the call.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
That was a good call. One more call, last call, and I got a couple of minutes. I gotta head out. 407. How you doing? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mel.
Hey, who's this?
Mel, it's Cheeks. How are you?
Cheeks.
Or
Hey,
Mickey
good.
or
How you
Michelle,
doing?
Whichever one. I'm good. Okay, so I had to call because, again, I've said it in Discord. I know about some random cases, and this was one that caught my attention because this isn't necessarily something that happens every day. Based on the 2 calls that you took earlier, everything is true. You lied to his parents, said that he had a job lined up at SpaceX, started the whole process of relocating. Him and his fiance were looking at houses.
Wow.
He then, I guess he had a minor injury, as somebody has stated, but then went on the full, neck brace. I'm too hurt. I can't move. I can't take the job. Then he started accumulating a lot of debt, and I guess his parents were kind of helping him with that financially. And so when dad is like, dude, we're putting up all this money. When are we going to get some money back? That's when he falsifies a whole bunch of documents from the HR department stating the reason as to why he's not getting paid, but pretending that he worked at home during COVID, but apparently playing video games. I believe one of the things that the girlfriend's family said that they noticed was if he had such a bad neck injury, why would he get into the pool? Because they did get into the pool like a couple of days afterwards. I guess with him removing the neck brace, and they were like, well, if you had a major neck injury, how could you be in the pool? That's not making any sense. Apparently, they saw him hanging out in the woods for a while, which is apparently, I guess, where he ended up dumping the mom's body. I remember that one thing that he did mention, he had told the cops that the reasoning as to why his parents were missing was because they were going on a camping trip with some friends that he did not know. And when he came home, they were gone. Apparently, the family has like a little vacation cabin, and he said that that's where they were supposed to be going. So when the cops actually started the initial, I guess, missing persons investigation, they went to the cabin only to see that there had not been any activity in the cabin. There was no, signs of life, quote unquote, like nobody had been in there. And there's actually body cam footage of them getting into the cabin and being like, bruh, there is nothing here. There's no empty bottles, no nothing. He actually went so far, he as in Chandler, actually went so far to go visit neighbors, asking them if he could look at their Ring camera footage to see what the cops were going to see.
Wow. Yeah.
He was constantly calling the cops, asking them, hey, why are there cops here in front of my house? Why are there cops? And the cops were like, well, we don't know. It could be a change of shift and all this other stuff. Dude went really overboard. So apparently, I guess he had killed his father the day before they were supposed to go meet with the school. There is actually a recording of the father speaking to administration at the school, asking for a particular person who was in these quote unquote emails about his son's performance at school. When he's talking to this representative at the school is like, sir, we don't have anybody on our staff by that name. Then he's like, okay, do me a favor. Can you go ahead and check and see if my son is registered for the school? And they're like, he has not been registered for almost 2 or 3 semesters. Apparently, the very next day is when he killed his father. They were supposed to go meet up at the school. Dad found out some crap, and then he went ahead and shot his father. I think he sent him a text message and said that we need to talk. And I guess that was the last little quote-unquote bit that pushed him over the point where he felt like he couldn't get out of his lies, which could have just been explaining to his parents, but decided to go ahead and off his parents so that this way he couldn't face the music in regards to shit that he literally put himself in.
Holy crap. And the chat's saying you're on point. So you're doing good. Thank you for the other time that you called too.
You're welcome. Like I said, again, I watched a video on it. I will link it in Discord. I'll send it to you. But I told you, I just know about random cases. I'm at work. I'm at home. I'm just listening to stuff. And this is one that I had been following for a while. And I've listened to the recordings of the dad calling the school administration. The girlfriend absolutely was like, hey, bruh, you told me that you were at home. But last night, looking on Snapchat, you were out in the middle of nowhere. And out in the middle of nowhere is when they started finding body parts.
So Brittany said that he had fans blowing on the fire to get it super hot to burn the body parts. The fire got so hot it exploded. The outer glass.
I remember hearing
Holy crap.
that apparently he did try to burn the body first because, again, for whatever reason, you would think in this time and age, we all know at this point, you're not going to cremate somebody at home in your fireplace, but people still try and do these things. He tried, it did not work, so he gathered what he could, and body parts were literally just scattered everywhere. Mom was found,
Brittany said too that the mom's body was only legs, and the dad's body was only a torso. That's all that was found.
Legs, then they found a torso. I don't even know if the heads have been found. After that, I was like, oh my gosh. And I had kind of been peeking in at the trial, but I had followed the backstory of this because it was so crazy and outrageous. But we've heard cases like this before where people fabricate this BS. You know, oh, I do this for a living, you know, oh, I get all this money. And then when people are like, okay, well, show and prove, oh, I can't, my car, my Ferrari, it got into a wreck, and I can't do this because my bank accounts are locked up because of fraud. And instead of just kind of facing the music, he was just like, you know what, I'm just better off, I'm going to one-off it and knock off my parents. And this is what happened. And the fact that they tried to negate and say that, you know, based on the foundation is kind of, I don't want to misquote what they were saying because I actually did listen to the stream. But I guess, you know, his parents look like they gave him a solid foundation. So the fact of the matter is that your parents look like they provided you a solid foundation, and you literally decided to keep this web of lies going when literally, I know that I've caught myself up in some shit with my dad, and I've gone to my dad and been like, look, what I said, this ain't it. This is what's really going on, and I need help. And my dad has been like, okay, I'm pissed that you lied to me because you could have came to me about the truth, but we're going to work it out. His parents looked like those type of parents. So I don't even understand how it got to a point that you were just like, no, I'm going to do the absolute worst thing that I could possibly do to people who love me, care for me, and have continued to care for me for the past 24 years. I don't give a damn what that lady was saying, talking about there's been events in her life that have molded her for 20 some odd. He's not a child. He is 24 years old. He is a grown man. That doesn't even make any sense to me. If he was 16, I could possibly see what she's saying. Nobody wants to grow up, you know, having to go through life in the judicial. He is 24. He's been an adult since 18, but he's still moving like a child. And at this point in time, these are not childlike actions. You have to face the consequences. I'm glad they gave him no parole because this is just above and beyond you. He was so deep in his shit, and instead of being a man about it and just being like, look, parents, I effed up. Please help me out. He decided to take him out and put himself in a far worse position because guess what? Now your parents can't help you because look at what you did.
That's it, yeah. Yeah, and he does, there's no, I mean, I didn't watch the trial, but just the little piece that I saw, it don't look remorseful at all. And to not even,
no, I don't.
He didn't want to tell them what the other body parts are or nothing?
When you look at the interrogation, you should just see he's just very emotionless. Like he just,
really? We got to check that out. We got to watch that.
Not care. I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna find the video that I watched where I heard about, you know, heard the dad calling. I'll go ahead and send it to you in Discord.
Yeah.
But like I said, I told Vic, I said, I just know about too many random cases. So sometimes when I'd be like, oh, don't call. But I had to call on this one because I've been watching.
No, it's good. I appreciate your call. Everybody likes your calls. And on the last call, you did really good too. So I appreciate it. Good breakdown. That's crazy.
You're very welcome, my love. But you're always catching me at work, and I am still at work, so I need to go.
Yeah, we'll talk. I got to head out too. Yeah, thank you so much, though. I appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the call. Not a problem, honey, and I'm looking forward to your other ones.
All right, thanks. Take care.
All right, bye.
I gotta. She recommended a good story the last time too about the whole thing where we were talking about Brian Laundrie. We were talking about Brian Laundrie and Petitos and the whole lawsuit thing, and she was talking about a different case that a lawsuit actually got the whole criminal charge thing to happen on somebody or parents or whatever. I forgot the story, but it was kind of interesting. Yeah, I had to close out the lines. I have to head out for now because I gotta go do a couple things, and my daughter's going to a mother's tonight, and I gotta prep a couple things. What am I doing? Did I hang up? Oh. So, but yeah, I'll be more available probably next couple of days. We'll see what we do. It'll be interesting to see the interrogation. We could just do a stream on the interrogation because now I'm kind of intrigued. I kept hearing of the name, but I'm like, I don't really know what the guy did, and I was just doing all these different things. But now that I'm kind of hearing from you guys, I'm like, holy crap, this guy was a monster, man. And cold too. and messy and overkill. Like I saw somebody else say in the chat, overkill. And he can't feel bad if he's not giving up any of the locations. And Boss said over 200 fragments of bone, including cranial bone and teeth, were recovered from the fireplace. And it's great, which aligns with prosecutors' argument that he burned his parents' heads in the fireplace. Wow. iCkEdMeL, can I please connect with you and tell you all? Yeah, send me an email, Ali, if you can. Email me, and then we can go from there. And I'm going to hit up Amanda, too, with regards to, like, the supplement and the vitamins, the stuff that I had going on with the blood work. Because she's into fitness and all these different things, so it'd be interesting. But yeah. Oh, and Ali, so Ali, email me and then we'll talk. And then also, I'm curious to know what highlights we could watch of the trial, whether it's just the interrogation, the fiance's. Was it Cheeky or somebody else said the fiance's thing was really good? Just a couple of parts would be interesting to hear. News is breaking down the trial. Okay. You check it out after. But okay, I gotta head out. Love you guys so much. Thank you for stopping by through the stream. Hit like on the way out, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and peace. Happy